Good morning to all speakers, guests, and colleagues. Welcome to the Manila Times Energy Forum 2024, titled Environmental Economical Generation. My name is Dafort, Villaseran, the Manila Times Supplements and Special Projects Editor, and it is my pleasure to be your host for this morning. And later, during the two separate fireside chats that we will be having with groups of our esteemed speakers, we will be having the Manila Times columnist Ben Kritz as the moderator. Now, all the talks and all the discussions today will center about how to ensure reliable and accessible and affordable power for the Philippines. So these involve new technologies in power generation, transmission, and distribution, which are gradually getting a foothold in the country as stakeholders in the energy sector would be able to best serve the interests of our fellow Filipinos. And now, to be able to strike the objective balance between both reliable traditional electrical generation as well as clean transitional system implementation, we look forward to being able to hear our speakers discuss these and more as we go into our program in depth. But in the meantime, please do allow me to introduce the thought leader in our media and communications industry who will give the welcoming remarks. Now, aside from being the chairman and chief executive officer or CEO of the Manila Times, he is also the chairman of the National Book Development Board, through which he hopes to nurture better informed Filipinos. He also interviews government officials, diplomats, and industry leaders in the Manila Times Roundtable, through which he hopes to encourage more critical thinking among Filipinos. So, esteemed guests and attendees, let's have a round of applause for Dante Clinkang II. Sir Clink, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure you're all eager to start today's program, but before we do, just allow me to greet some of our speakers from whom you'll be hearing today. Attorney Richard Nethercott, President and CEO of the Independent Electricity Market Operators of the Philippines. Also we'll hear later on from Attorney Monalisa Dimalanta, the Chairperson of the ERC. Raymond Ravelo, later on also will be speaking. He's the Chief Sustainability Officer of Meralco. Engineer Redi, Allan, Remoroza, AVP and Head of Transmission and Planning of the NGC. Later on we'll have Manny Rubio, President CEO of Aboitiz Power. My colleagues at the Manila Times, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. You know, in hindsight, this is a forum that we should have organized earlier in the year. I think, to be honest with you, we sort of put this together on the fly. But, you know, I said it should have been at the forefront of our list of things to do because energy is such a critical subject matter. The entire country is now preoccupied with maybe tinkering with the Constitution, but the aim goal there, of course, is to attract foreign investments. And then not a few have said that really the energy requirements are critical issues to discuss. Not only critical issues regarding meeting supply, but also critical in attaining our development aspirations of later on becoming a middle-income country in the world. I'm not the expert. You know, for those of you who are attending our event for the first time, we hold a series of business forum. Basically, what we do is we interview the people, the experts, and we open up to people like yourselves. Of course, we write stories about it in the print and digital editions of the Manila Times, but also we use these material also for our various digital and social media platforms. Very soon, you may be interested to know that the Manila Times is trying to develop a streaming channel. So maybe by the middle of this year, that is something we will have also to offer our readers and others in the public more information and direct access to people who can authoritatively discuss various issues of the day. So thank you very much for our speakers. And of course, thank you to all our partners who made this event possible. Aboitiz Power, Caruso Restaurante Italiano, City Corp Renewable Energy, Meralco, our venue partner, Century Park Hotel, our media partners, Rising Tigers Magazine, our own the Manila Times TV, and of course all of you attending this event. I know there are many things you could be attending here, but you are here instead. So thank you for that, and I hope that you have a productive morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Klink, for the welcoming remarks. We shall now proceed with our first keynote message. Now, our first speaker has been a practicing lawyer for over 20 years. She has also been a professor of law at the Ateneo de Manila Law School and has been a member of the faculty of the Ateneo School of Government. Prior to her present position, she was the chairman of the National Renewable Energy Board, laying the groundwork for the country's green energy auction program and updating the 20-year National Renewable Energy Plan. So she is now currently the Energy Regulatory Commission, or ERC chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all listen to a message from Monalisa Dimalanta.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Energy Regulatory Commission, allow me to first thank the Manila Times for organizing this forum and for inviting us to participate in this conversation. Personally, I am very happy to join you, even if it's just virtually today, to talk about the challenges we face as a nation and as a people living in these very exciting times. I always welcome these opportunities to engage in conversation about our nation's energy journey. I think energy tops the list of the most critical issues every nation in the world faces today. It is right up there together with food and national security. While climate change or environmental hazards would be included in that list as well, many are now of the view that national security now encompasses issues relating to the climate. This takes on a more significant role for us in the Philippines as we feel more acutely the brunt of environmental hazards. The World Risk Index is published annually as part of the World Risk Report to measure the susceptibility of 193 countries in the world to extreme natural events vis-a-vis the structures in place to respond quickly and provide assistance in cases of emergency. According to the 2023 World Risk Index, the Philippines ranks first among the top 10 countries with the highest risk, followed by Indonesia, then India. The Philippines also ranks fourth among the top 10 countries with the highest number of population exposed to disasters such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and floodings. While we face this reality, we likewise continue to face, as a country, a declining level of energy self-sufficiency. That is, that our ability to produce or generate our own energy resources domestically without relying extensively on imports. This includes our capacity to meet the country's energy demands using resources available within our borders, such as fossil fuels, renewable energy sources, and other indigenous energy sources. Achieving self-sufficiency is a key objective for ensuring energy security and reducing dependence on external sources, thereby promoting economic stability and resilience in the energy sector. As you can see in this graph, the self-sufficiency level of the Philippines from 2008 to 2021 has been declining. From 67.1% in 2008, it has decreased to 45.1% in 2021. As energy self-sufficiency declines, the country becomes more dependent on external sources for its energy needs, which can pose challenges to energy security and sustainability. On a positive note, according to the Bloomberg New Energy Finance Climate Scope 2023, the Philippines emerges as one of the top 5 attractive markets globally for clean energy investments, ranking 4th among 110 developing economies, a significant rise from its previous 10th spot. The Philippines' climb reflects significant progress in transitioning to renewable energy, supported by measures such as our green energy auction, feed-in tariffs, and tax incentives. The Department of Energy's second green energy auction awarded 3.4 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, with supportive policies stimulating growth in clean energy investment. The country's clean energy investment expanded by 41% from 2021 to 2022, reaching $1.34 billion. The DOE aims to increase RE share in the power generation mix to 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. It undertakes initiatives to propel investments in various energy technologies, emphasizing resilience and climate adaptation in energy infrastructure. But where are we today? This is a snapshot of the Philippine energy sector as it stands at the moment. We take stock of this power sector as of January 2024, where the ERC regulates an energy industry currently valued at 630 billion pesos, comprised of the four sectors: generation, transmission, distribution, and supply. These sectors continue to grow over the years. In 2020 to 2040, the DOE targets to increase this value of the sector with 7 trillion peso investments in the Philippine Energy Plan of 2020 to 2040. This is what we call the clean energy scenario. The number of investments is targeted to produce 92.3 gigawatts by 2040. This sector now comprises of about 226 generation companies operating 577 power plants in the country. We have a fully functioning wholesale electricity spot market with 468 participants trading at 5-minute intervals per day. We also now have a reserves market that now operates. The other details are provided, and we can also talk about them as we go along. Some fun facts over the last 2 decades of this power industry. Gross electricity consumption has grown by more than 100%, with gross power generation also equally growing at that level. But I think the bigger story lies with the comparison of growth from the utilization of coal in our system and the utilization of renewable energy. As you can see from the slide, the utilization of coal has grown by more than 300% from 2008 to 2022, while the utilization of renewable energy sources have grown by about 20%. And what's curious about this period is that this is the period when the Renewable Energy Act was passed in 2008, late 2008, and started to take effect in 2009. So this is one area of the story of the Philippine energy journey that we should also pay attention to. One aspect that may be curious for all is the growth of the transmission sector, where we have seen from the period that the concession has taken place in 2009 to 2023. In terms of transmission line length, it has grown by only 8%. And this is one area where it is also posing a challenge to the growth of the generation sector, where there is some stunted growth in the absence of transmission line and transmission facilities. But today, let us not lose sight of some key developments that have been completed just over the last few months. For the first time in our nation's history, we have a unified power grid that with the completion of the Mindanao-Visayas Interconnection Project. Today, the 3 main islands of the country, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, are finally physically connected via submarine cable that now allows the excess power from Mindanao to be transported to Visayas and then to Luzon. The singular network is no more than just the sum of its parts. It introduces yet again another transformation to the Philippine power system. Such integration carries the potential to enhance grid stability, improve energy reliability, and bolster the resilience of the nation's power infrastructure. It allows for the creation of new markets, especially with the commencement of operation of WESM in Mindanao and, as I mentioned earlier, the reserves market. In the next few days, Retail Competition and Open Access, or RCOA, will also commence in Mindanao, allowing large customers in the island to finally exercise their power to choose their own supplier and negotiate their own power supply rates. As we move forward to growing the Philippine power sector, the ERC works hand in hand with the Department of Energy in delivering our respective mandates. To meet the goal of increasing the RE share by 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040, the ERC has various programs and projects to support this, to support the meeting of these objectives. We have been aggressively promoting the net metering program and supporting the DOE in the conduct of the Green Energy Auction Program. The feed-in tariff program is still in place and still supplying renewable energy to the entire system, together with the Renewable Portfolio Standard that has been already implemented since last year. We likewise support the DOE in promoting energy efficiency and conservation, as well as pursuing emerging technologies to achieve energy security. We also have the mandate to promote a level playing field in the power sector, and we have been performing this mandate more diligently over the last few years. For 2024, we have various programs that we are targeting to issue, particularly to pursue energy independence. We have already conducted the public consultations for some of these issuances, and some we will commence public consultations this year. But definitely for all these issuances that you see on your screen, these are all targeted to be completed within 2024. For promotion of consumer protection and consumer choice, let me just highlight two areas among the list that you see before you. First is the amendment of the Universal Charge Missionary Electrification. This is the subsidy provided by the main grid consumers to the off-grid consumers. Starting this week and for the next 5 weeks, all 5 members of the Commission will be presiding over simultaneous hearings in the different islands in the country. We aim to complete the hearings for the new subsidy rates by the next month, by April, so that we can already rule on this and we can have a new subsidy rate within the year. This is aimed to promote a more rationalized implementation of the subsidies for our off-grid islands, knowing and mindful also of the burden being carried by our main grid consumers. The second item I want to highlight here is the last bullet that you see, which is the omnibus rules for customer choice programs. While we have separate programs that you have seen in the other slides for net metering, retail competition, green energy auction, in this set of rules, we have consolidated them and streamlined the requirements for consumers to actively participate and for consumers to make an effective exercise of their right to choose that is guaranteed under EPIRA and under the Renewable Energy Act. So this omnibus set of rules for customer choice programs in the retail electricity market is targeted to be issued by next month by the Commission. While we pursue all these programs, and as a way for us to pursue these programs, we are also revolutionizing the way we do things at the agency. Last year, we launched what we call ERC Lingkod, which is our suite of digital solutions to deliver services to the public. This platform houses our online filing system, the monthly reporting for our distribution utilities, as well as our consumer complaints ticketing system. Our website also now hosts an interactive map of the country where you can locate all the generation facilities, including the rates charged by these facilities under power supply agreements approved by the Commission. All these efforts on digitalization and transparency are aimed at empowering our consumers to not only present their complaints to the Commission or for our stakeholders to submit their filings to the agency, but in the greater scheme of things, promote what we call energy democracy. Ultimately, the country's pursuit of energy democracy as well as energy affordability should bring about a greater ability for us to control our own future. In other words, to define our own destiny. With this, we hope we are able to contribute to the conversation this morning, and thank you again for this opportunity. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga.
We are grateful to ERC Chairman Monalisa for preparing her report despite her hectic schedule. Next up, we have our second keynote message. Now, our second speaker has also practiced law for over 20 years, specializing in criminal litigation, commercial law, and labor law. Likewise, he has been a professor at De La Salle University, Manila. He has also had extensive experience in government service, having worked in the Senate, Congress, and in local government units. Now, prior to his current position in the Independent Electricity Market Operator of the Philippines, or IEMOP, he was its corporate treasurer and one of its pioneer directors. He is presently the IEMOP President and CEO. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Richard Nethercott. Richard, the stage is all yours. The clicker is here on the podium.
Okay, hello. So good morning. Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, particularly Mr. Dante Clink Ang, and of course, Ms. Mercado, and Mr. Ben Kritz, and of course, the entire Manila Times family. So thank you for having us here today. I'm presenting today the market operator's role in ensuring reliable, accessible, and affordable power. For those who are familiar with the subject matter, I hope this presentation will provide you new insights. For those that are not yet too familiar, it is hoped that a proper introduction and explanation of this subject matter are achieved by this presentation. So, first, let me start with an overview of the WESM. So the WESM was established pursuant to Section 30 of the IPIRA. And its objectives are basically to promote a level playing field among WESM participants, where prices are governed as far as practicable by commercial and market forces, where trading is facilitated among participants in the spot market, thereby providing proper accounting and provision of data, and where third parties are granted access to the power system. And with all of these objectives, hopefully efficiency is encouraged. So therefore, we can say that the WESM objectives are fourfold. One is competition, two is transparency, three is accessibility, four is efficiency. Now, the WESM is operated by the market operator, which is the Independent Electricity Market Operator of the Philippines, and its duties and responsibilities primarily pertain to the administration of the market, to determine dispatch schedule and, of course, clearing prices, to monitor daily trading activities, and to oversee transaction billing and settlement procedures. So the key concepts of the WESM, as provided under RA 9136, are the following. It is wholesale. It only pertains to large quantities of electricity. Electricity being the commodity traded. Spot, because transactions settled in the market are only those that are bought outside of contracted capacities or those that are not covered by contracts. And it's a market. It's a venue for buying and selling electricity. So how does WESM affect electricity rates? If you will examine your monthly electric bill, you will find there an item called generation charge. This generation rate is basically a blended rate. It is a combination of the rates passed on by generation companies through their power supply agreements and if they have purchases in the spot market. So it's a blended rate. Now, a contracted price, of course, a constant price within the period of the PSA. But in the WESM, the prices fluctuate every interval, every hour, based on supply and demand. However, WESM prices are settled based on the concept of the so-called ESSP, or the effective spot settlement price, which is the weighted average price factoring in the quantity bought at the price at the certain interval it was bought at. So, to illustrate this, let me go to the next slide, which is to give you the excuse. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. So, okay. So this is the next slide. This is a summary of the market outcomes for the past year, 2023. As you can see, that dark blue portion of the graph, that pertains to the quantity, percentage quantity of electricity procured through the spot market. Okay, on the average, it's roughly around 18%, most of the time, for every month. Now, for the entire year of 2023, the spot market accounted to about 17.5% of the total customer consumption of electricity. And if you look at the effective spot settlement price of 6.44 pesos for 2023 is actually lower than the previous year. Now, if you will compare this with contracted PSA rates, you will discover that this is actually competitive. If not lower, it is competitive. And with that competitive price, we are provided certain benefits. Now, the objectives of the WESM, as I said, are competition, transparency, accessibility, and efficiency. Achieving these objectives will allow for the consumer and for the industry to experience the full benefit of the WESM. And it is promoted and it is felt through tangible means. Like, for example, the WESM allows for the contracting flexibility. Contracting flexibility means you can avoid now over-contracting or under-contracting. Unlike before, where the only mode of buying electricity is through PSAs or through contracts. But with the WESM, you can only contract a certain level. If you are the DU or the distribution utility or the electric cooperative, you can contract at a certain level and buy the rest from the market. Now, through the market also, generation companies can sell their non-contracted capacities or even buy from the market what we call replacement power. So if the generation for some reason cannot provide their contracted capacity, they can source it to the market. Also, this flexibility allows for distribution utilities to sell in the market their excess capacity that they contracted. Because as we know, demand requirements fluctuate, varies every interval. So, another tangible benefit is to allow investors the necessary data information to help them come up with more informed decisions in crafting their plans or strategy, their trading on when to invest, where to put up the plans, and what technology to invest in. It also promotes increased and accelerated development of renewable energy. As we have now seen in the market, there are more than 30 facilities that are merchant power plants. Merchant power plants are those that are exclusively selling their electricity production in the market rather than through a PSA or through a hybrid scheme. So the market encourages this, no, through the by allowing power plants the flexibility of offering their electricity through the market rather than through a CSP, through a PSA that is entered into through a competitive selection process. Okay, so basically that is the energy market. But the WESM is not just the energy market. We now have a co-optimized market. We just recently launched the reserve market last January 26, and I will talk about it a little later. But let me just, with this slide, inform you of the programs that we implement in the WESM. We are also the central registration body for our retail electricity market programs. Basically, our ARCOA and the GEOP, and later on I will discuss with you the renewable energy market, which we hope will go into full commercial operation before the end of the year. Now, the reserve market basically is similar to an energy market where the reserve energy provider, in this case our system operator, which is NGCP, can buy the ancillary services requirement necessary to provide stability and reliability to the grid. AS services or ancillary services are energy required for frequency control or stability. Okay, so basically that's the need for the reserve. It's on top of the demand requirement for that is consumed every day. Now, with the advent of the reserve market, we have seen increased compliance. As you can see from the tables and the graphs in this slide, prior to the operation of the reserve market, we were seeing compliance with the contingency and dispatchable reserve requirements at around 50 to 60% level. But after the reserve market, we are now seeing increased compliance. Like even in Mindanao, it's now 100% for all types of reserves. No, in Visayas, we still have a gap. In Visayas only about 60%, but that has something to do with the available AS services in the region. Now, aside from a co-optimized energy and reserve market, we now also have in the WESM the competitive retail electricity market programs. Basically, right now we have the ARCOA or the Retail Competition Open Access, and we have the GEOP, which is the Green Energy Option Program. They are similar. They have minor differences, but they're similar. ARCOA allows contestable customers. Contestable customers are those that are consuming more than 500 kilowatts of electricity. No? They can now migrate from being a captive customer. Captive customer are the end users that are within distribution utilities and electric cooperatives. No? If you are consuming 500 kilowatts, you can now migrate or switch from being a captive customer to a contestable customer. And being a contestable customer allows you to decide which electricity supplier you can source your power from. The establishment of ARCOA is mandated by the Electric Power Reform Act of 2001, the EPIRA, to offer options to the end users and to grow the market. Okay, so the demand threshold for ARCOA is 500 kilowatts. However, with GEOP, the demand threshold is lower. It is 100 kilowatts. So GEOP, or the Green Energy Option Program, is a mechanism that allows consumers to choose to source renewable energy from a licensed supplier as opposed to consuming whatever supply is provided by the distribution utility. So GEOP is exclusively renewable energy, and the threshold is 100 kilowatts. It was established pursuant to Republic Act also known as the Renewable Energy Act of 2008. Conceptually, ARCOA and GEOP are the same. There's one more minor difference between the two. That is with regard to opt-out. When can you get out? If you're into the program, when can you get out? With ARCOA, you can opt out of the program when the ERC certifies that for 3 consecutive months, your consumption has gone down the threshold. Now, with the GEOP, you can opt out anytime. So if you switch to being a GEOP customer and you want to get out of it and avail of perhaps lower rates by the DU, then you can opt out anytime. So as the central registration body, okay, before I proceed to that, there's one more detail that I want to talk about this slide. As you can see in the slide, retail market transactions now account to 22% of the total transactions in the market. So that is significant considering our aspirational target regarding energy mix of 35% by 2030. So as the CRB, as I was saying, as the central registration body, we are in charge. The market operators is in charge of facilitating the initial switch of customers that are qualified for the program and their subsequent regular switches. Regular switch is when you change suppliers from one to the other. Initial switch is when you transition from a captive customer to a contestable customer. So this is just to provide you some of the demographics in the WESM. As you can see, we now have 447 WESM participants, and these are generation companies, distribution utilities, electric cooperatives, metering service providers, directly connected customers, and ancillary service providers and buyers. We now have 2,154 ARCOA participants, mainly contestable customers. And we now have 391 GEO participants, which are mostly also retail customers. But and more are coming. There are more applications pending in our system as we speak. So, having given you a WESM overview, let me now delve into the other programs that we are advocating in the WESM. So what's next for the WESM? Okay, we are advocating the operation of the spot market in the off-grid islands of Mindoro and Palawan. We intend to do this by implementing a day-ahead scheduling and real-time dispatch mechanism. And why do we advocate the same? We see that the market, the spot market, is not only about energy and competitive pricing. It's also about retail competition. So if we bring in the spot market in these island provinces ahead of its interconnection to the national grid through Batangas, then we can see a more dynamic market in those provinces where we can entice new generation, particularly RE. In these islands, there are not much renewable energy generations. We can encourage RE generation companies to invest in these islands and therefore increase the number of generation companies promoting or offering electricity. We can then increase the number of participants, which will in turn promote competition. And with competition comes more shall we say, affordable prices. Also, we see that with the market operating in the off-grid areas, we can accelerate and encourage the further development of the Mimaropa grid, the Mimaropa grid, which will be vital infrastructure that would later on connect the entire island through Panay. So, aside from the off-grid markets, we are also advocating and are in the pipeline the implementation of a capacity market in the Philippines, and also later on the forwards market. But these two markets are in their early stages of development, and we might see them hopefully in the near future, hopefully in 2 years or even sooner. They are already in the pipeline, and we are doing this in close coordination with DOE and ERC. But aside from this, we are this year advocating the full commercial operation of the renewable energy market. Pursuant to the RE law, the renewable energy market was established to serve as the venue for the buying and selling of renewable energy certificates, so that mandated participants can comply with their annual renewable portfolio standards by retiring the number of RECs required for a particular compliance period. As defined in the REM rules promulgated by the Department of Energy, renewable energy certificates are market-based instruments representing all renewable and environmental attributes from 1 megawatt hour of electricity generation sourced from an eligible RE generation facility. So basically, one RE certificate is 1 megawatt hour, and it may be traded after for purposes of complying with the renewable portfolio standards. The REM aims to assist the industry in reaching these aspirational targets, which is included in the National Renewable Energy Program of the DOE. As I said, the aspirational target is 35% contribution in the energy mix by 2030, and increasing it further to 50% by 2040. Now, to highlight the state of development of renewable energy in the electric power industry, this slide will provide you some basic information. Like, for example, you will see here highlighted that in 2023, RE has already contributed almost 22% of our energy mix. So we are on the right track. We can reach the aspirational target by 2030. There are a lot of RE plants under development. The DOE is fast-tracking the auction of capacities for renewable energy. So hopefully we meet those targets so that we can comply with our international obligations to provide clean, affordable energy to all. So, renewable energy in 2023 accounted for 23,168 gigawatt hours out of the total 106,901 gigawatt hours of total energy mix. To wrap this up, I would like to synthesize this presentation. So, the market operator's role in ensuring reliable, accessible, affordable power may be summarized this way. For reliability, we have 17 years of WESM operations. And in these 17 years, we have seen a growing population of trading participants. We have seen increased generation capacity, which translates to improved supply mix to match our growing demand. With the integration of the reserve market, we have seen an improved reliability of the grid. Ancillary services required for frequency control are complied with by committing more capacities to meet the required level of frequency control ancillary services or reserves. Such committed capacities in turn were able to manage power frequency levels within acceptable levels for the different power grids. All this illustrates a vibrant interplay between industry players promoting reliability. As for accessibility, we now know that the three major regions are interconnected. We now have a Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao national grid, where excess generation may now be sold outside of each region. And conceptually, this trading can happen from Luzon all the way to Mindanao. These interconnections between the Visayas and Mindanao regions have been pivotal in addressing the power supply challenges in Luzon and Visayas, all of which are facilitated through the spot market. Now, as to affordability, it is undeniable that Western prices fluctuate. However, it is also undeniable that Western prices offers an economical alternative to over-contracting or under-contracting. With the retail market also, we have seen customers having the power of choice from whom to buy their electricity requirement. And all of this result to the lowering or the increasing of competition in the industry, and this increased competition promotes affordable power, affordable electricity rates. So I would like to end my presentation with this slide, and hopefully I was able to contribute in today's discussion. Good morning again, and good day.
Thank you, Richard, for making your data and your strategies accessible not just to stakeholders, but even the consumers at our forum. Now, we'll be inviting you back later for our first fireside chat together with the Manila Times columnist Ben Kritz. But for now, we shall have our third talk. Holding a Bachelor of Science degree, magna cum laude, in Management Engineering from the Ateneo de Manila University, our third speaker has been the President and CEO of Radius Telecoms, Spectrum Incorporated, and eSakay Incorporated. He is concurrently the President and CEO of Movem Electric and the Director on the boards of MGen Renewable Energy and PowerSource First Bulacan. Now he is the Meralco First Vice President or FVP and Chief Sustainability Officer or CSO of Meralco. Now, ladies and gents, please welcome Ross Raymond Ravelo.
Thank you, Dafort. Appreciate the introduction. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our Chairman and CEO, Manuel V. Pangilinan, it is certainly our pleasure, our privilege to be here and to be part of this forum. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So today I'll be talking about something that is very important to Meralco, and you'll see that through the presentation and hopefully as we interact and engage in discussion. And that is sustainability. No? So I'll start with a brief video just to get things started, and then I'll proceed with my presentation. Thank you. I think we'll try to do that video again. I think there was a voiceover that was missing. So I think while we'll do it after. Okay, so we'll do that video after, but I think the point of that video is that what you were seeing was a few things. Number one, we have what we call an overarching sustainability agenda, which we call Powering the Good Life, and I'll talk more about that today. And if you look at what makes up Powering the Good Life, it's really four distinct pillars, what we call our 4 Ps. That's power, planet, people, and prosperity, and that's how we organize our initiatives. So you'll see that in the video later. Hopefully we'll have time to do it at the back end. But one thing I will say is that a lot of the initiatives you will see in that video are really about the here and now, right? We want to make sure that sustainability is relevant to us today, but obviously sustainability is not just about the here and now. And I will be talking today about our views on the future, particularly our long-term sustainability strategy. So, okay, so, sustainability, if I back up a few clicks, we actually started being more, focused on it beginning in 2019. When we said, look, at that point, Attorney Ray Espinosa took the helm of Meralco, and he said, look, we've got to take this more seriously. It's not something that is peripheral to our business. It's something that should be at the core of everything we do, right? At that point, I was leading strategy for Meralco, but he said, let's broaden that role, right? It's no longer about future-proofing Meralco through strategy and business development. It's about future-proofing not only ourselves, but the environment around us, right? Because it's no use being a future-proof company if there's no business to operate in, or if there's no environment to operate in. So that's what we did in 2019. We established our sustainability agenda, and we put a bit of a tagline around it, Powering the Good Life. 4 pillars, as I mentioned. The following years, after we established, we tried to really embed and engage sustainability in our strategy and operations as a company. So we put in metrics in place, very specific metrics that guide our entire management team. In fact, the management team's compensation and salary is partially dependent on our sustainability performance. We've gone to that extent. We've put in place key programs, a number of things around community electrification, which is part of our business as usual, but we started doing new things, such as solarizing our facilities, not only our main offices in Ortigas, but also our business centers and sector offices. We started deploying electric vehicles across our fleet. Today, about 7% of our fleet is electrified. If you look at the Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act, the requirement is only for 5% by something like 2030, 5 to 10%. We're targeting to get that to about 25% before the end of this decade. So we're serious about electric vehicles. And of course, we've been more pronounced about our communications. In 2020, we published our very first sustainability report, and we'll continue to do that, as we go forward. So established in 2019, about 2020, 2021, we started to put programs to really embed and engage sustainability in our organization. Then we moved to around the back end of 2021. We said, look, we've got to look forward, right? We've got to have kind of a guiding principle, a North Star that will guide our sustainability efforts going forward. That's why we came up with what we call our long-term sustainability strategy. And we took a very long view. We're looking at between today and 2050, right? So that's what I will be discussing today. And there is clearly a decarbonization element to it, which I think will be something you'd be very interested to hear. And there's a social and governance aspect to it, about promoting the well-being of communities. Today, I'll be focusing on the top part. Okay? Next page, please. So to put things into context, the Philippines is but a drop in the bucket in terms of global emissions. We take care, or we are responsible for only about 0.5%. And let me share a stat with you, which could be a little bit disconcerting. While we only account for 0.5% of global emissions, in the latest studies, I think at the global level, we have been identified as a country most at risk, literally number 1 on the list, most at risk from the impacts of climate change. So that's not the list you want to be at the top of, obviously, right? But I think that puts a little bit of a sense of how imbalanced the situation is. A lot of the developed countries have really been responsible for the global emissions, have been responsible for the problem, but really, we bear the brunt of that problem. So 0.5% globally, but within the Philippines, Meralco takes up about 15% of the total country's emissions. So we actually have a great part to play in the country's decarbonization effort. Next page. Some definition of terms. When we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, there's really three types, right? There's scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 refers to direct emissions. So emissions that really come up from your own business directly and largely controllable by your operation. So in our case, these are our power generation companies, our gensets, to a certain degree, our vehicles, and some network equipment such as our switch gears. Scope 2 is the first type of indirect emissions. In our case, that's system loss, right? Or our own use electricity consumption. And the largest part of our emissions is scope 3, largely also beyond our control because this is emissions in our supply chain. In this case, the emissions from the power that we sell. But we in Meralco, given the seriousness we attribute to sustainability, we focus on all three, right? With of course, the greatest degree of focus and control on scope 1 because this is directly attributable to us. Okay, next page, please. So as I said earlier, we have a long-term sustainability strategy, which we have outlined over 3 horizons, 2021 to 2030, 31 to 40, and 41 to 50, and each has a distinct theme. For 2021 to 30, this is really our thrust to initiate our low-carbon transition by investing more heavily in renewable energy, right? And that is not only as a generation company, but as a distribution company. 2031 to 2040 is where we will accelerate that shift by assessing and potentially adopting new clean technologies. So we're talking about things such as nuclear, hydrogen, offshore wind, and other technologies, which today might not be viable technologically and economically, but will be so in the next horizon. But the work begins today. And then finally, 2041 to 2050 is where we will drive deep decarbonization with an intent to be coal-free before the end of that decade. So this, as you see, is a just, orderly, and affordable transition. It cannot happen overnight. Otherwise, we will compromise and prejudice other things such as the social aspects of sustainability, which we do not want to do. Okay, so I'll focus on Horizon 1 for the purpose of today's discussion. So as I said, the thrust here is to invest more heavily in traditional renewable energy technology, solar, wind, hydro. And to that end, we have made what I call a twin commitment. First, as a distribution utility, we have committed to contract 1,500 megawatts of renewable energy supply. And as a generation company, we will also build about 1,500 megawatts of attributable renewable energy capacity. So I'm happy to report that on the first commitment, we've already exceeded it. If you look at this slide, we actually have gone from 1,500 to close to 1,900 megawatts, broken down between the distribution utility supply contracts and our retail electricity supplier supply contracts. So in aggregate, about 1,880, and these are the plants that we have so far contracted. On the generation front, we are close already to that commitment. We have we have a gross capacity from a pipeline standpoint of nearly 4,000 megawatts. But again, the commitment is not on the gross capacity. The commitment is on the attributable capacity, and we are at 1,443 megawatts. So just 57 megawatts shy, and we still have 6 years to go, right? And this is the breakdown by capacity across different technologies, solar plus BESS. As you probably heard in the news or saw in the news, we are building what is today the largest solar facility in the world, together with batteries, and then some solar farms and some wind farms as well. Next page. So in sum, we are looking to invest nearly or more than 100 billion pesos in sustainability-related capital investments over this horizon, right? A large part of it, about half of it, or just a shade over half of it, will be in the regulated business in the distribution utility on things such as RE integration, reduction in system loss, ester oil transformers, and electric vehicles as such. About 43 billion will be needed to bring to reality the plans I mentioned in the previous page, and then about 4 billion on other things such as rooftop solarization and our One Meralco Foundation initiatives or community-related activities. So all told, about 101 billion. Now, from an emission standpoint, this will also move the needle quite significantly, at least in Horizon 1. We initially identified our baseline to be close to about 49 million tons of CO2e, broken down as about 30 million tons in Scope 3, about 3 million tons in Scope 2, and about 16 in Scope 1. Once we're all done with this, we will have brought that down by 20% on the top line, this total of all scopes, and about 30% more significantly on Scope 1, which, as I said, is a scope that is largely within our control, or purely within our control. So this long-term sustainability strategy of ours is clearly anchored on a very, very significant emissions reduction program. Okay, next page. Horizon 2 and 3. So this one we will discuss in a little less detail, but let me just share a few things. This is where we will look at new technologies, as I said earlier. Just to give you a perspective, this is on the left-hand side of the page. This is a profile of the current technologies and their emissions profile. So we're looking at coal, supercritical, ultra supercritical coal and gas. So you see that it's in the order of about 900 tons of CO2e per gigawatt hour. There is an opportunity in the next horizon to look at other technologies, and these are specifically the technologies we're looking at. Battery energy storage at 50, offshore wind at 10, and nuclear at 10. When we're looking at nuclear, we're looking at not the traditional nuclear per se, but really emerging nuclear technologies such as small modular reactors, even micro-modular reactors, right? So in this particular vein, we have actually begun a pre-feasibility study with a company in the US called UltraSafe Nuclear. And we are expecting the results of this study to come out before the end of this first quarter. So we'll be sharing that with you in a moment. So maybe as a last slide, I'll just share with you that again, sustainability is very important to us. It's at the top of our corporate agenda, and to that end, we've actually established a sustainability committee at the board level, and this is chaired by no less than MVP, and also vice chaired by no less than Mr. Gokong Wei. Right, so this is very important to us, and we really made the commitment to make sure that it's at the top of not only our management agenda but our board's agenda. So that is my last slide. I will leave some time for discussion later. I think we have time to present the video that I had initially teed up.
Paano mapabubuti ang buhay ng lahat ngayon at sa hinaharap? We have the power to bring good to the country. Sa pinagsama-sama nating lakas, maisusulong ang mga pamayanan at kalungsuran. Magbibigay liwanag kahit kanino, kahit kailan. Magbibigay lakas na laging maaasahan. Power that protects Mother Earth. Lakas na maghahatid sa atin ng kalinisan at kaginhawaan sa mundong luntian. Mula sa ating mga himpilan hanggang makarating sa ating pinaglilingkuran. May kakayahan tayong maging masinop.
Thanks, Hannah. I brought my own.
Upang mapangalagaan ang daigdig, ang ating tanging tahanan, at maging ang ating kalusugan. We have the power to care for our people. Kalingain sila para mapaigting ng aming serbisyo sa inyo tungo sa maginhawang buhay at kinabukasan.
Your new home is now connected.
Salamat.
We can help bring forth prosperity and a brighter future for all. Sama-sama nating ilawan ang landas sa ikabubuti ng buhay at ng bukas ng ating mga mahal sa buhay. Powering the good life. Meralco.
So that ends our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond, for sharing Meralco's decarbonization efforts. Could we invite you to remain on stage for our first fireside chat for today? And we call on the Manila Times columnist Ben Kritz to moderate. We also would like to invite Richard Nethercott to join them on stage. Now, aside from writing his column Rough Trade thrice a week, Ben is also one of 4 people who writes the editorial for the Manila Times. Ben's focus on energy and the environment stems from his deep belief that these are the linchpins of survival for civilized humanity, in his own words. So he makes the economics of climate change, renewable energy, and sustainability relatable, while still calling out people for muddling issues or for being dishonest. So, Ben, you have about 25 minutes to be relatable or to call out people.
Thank you, Dafort. And thank you two gentlemen for your presentations. As Klink said earlier, this is something we probably should have done a lot sooner. So I'm glad that you've joined us to share. I'm gonna start with you, Richard, and I should probably let everybody know that we have had the benefit of a very recent conversation. So a lot of what he shared with you today is things that I already knew. But one point that stuck out to me, and you brought it up the other day. You also emphasized it here today, is the competitiveness of the prices in the West. And just an opinion, okay, if you wouldn't mind sharing it, with some of the difficulties and in some cases controversies that have come up with CSP processes and different power supply agreements, not just with Meralco, but this has been a general thing, I think. Would you advocate more of a mix between fixed contracts in the market, say something closer to 50-50 than the 17% that you have now?
Right now we're seeing about 18%, roughly. Say we increase that to 30%. Considering that the market is based on supply and demand, more demand will invariably increase also prices. So I would say that the current rules as it is now are beneficial. So I would just say let the market play out. If there are, because, okay, for example, we have seen buyers or utilities or cooperatives who are having problems or who have had problems with their PSA, go to the market and expose themselves at a 100% level. And significantly, their rates will increase because they will be exposed to the ever-changing prices in the West. So there will be uncertainty. So I will not advocate a fixed percentage of sharing. I would rather advocate that the market be allowed as it is, free from regulation and governed by the rule of supply and demand. Perhaps what we can advocate is to for the regulators to come in and perhaps encourage better strategy in contracting so that consumers may benefit more on competitive prices being set in the market.
Okay. Now to you. You mentioned some of the some of the clean tech, which is kind of the second phase of your sustainability journey, if you like. And of course, we know about the nuclear, which is the subject we'll get to later on. But what kind of apart from that, what kind of tech policy support and perhaps even financial support do you think that the government should should take a look at to make some of that possible. One thing that does interest me is the hydrogen, for an example. What will it take to actually get that off the ground here?
I can't speak too much about hydrogen just because I think from if we stack those technologies up, it's kind of we've determined that it's going to be towards more straddling the second and third horizon. But if I go back to nuclear, I think one thing that would be needed would be a regulatory framework for it. I mean, today I think that's something that's missing, being able to put some of the licensing policies in place would be very helpful. But what has been helpful, at least in the past few years, in the last two administrations, including the current one, first. Before President Duterte stepped down, he signed Executive Order 164, which says that nuclear will be part of the Philippine Energy Plan and should form a part of that and should have a piece of that. And then, of course, in the administration of PBBM, the signing of the 123 agreement, which facilitates the transfer of technologies from, in this case, the United States to the Philippines, if it becomes feasible. As you and I had a bit of a sidebar here earlier, I think there is some skepticism, obviously, about nuclear. It could be a skepticism that applies across all nuclear, but now we are looking at more, new nascent technologies such as small modular reactors. Obviously, the jury is still out. There is no existing SMR or MMR installation anywhere in the world. I hear there is one close to it in the United States, but it also fell through. This is the one by NuScale. Supposed to have been up in Idaho in 2028. We actually visited NuScale about 2 years ago. It was still up and supposed to have been running by 2028 at that point. But again, we have healthy kind of skepticism on it. But we believe that if proven successful, it could be a critical part of any decarbonization path, not only here in the Philippines, but elsewhere.
Well, if. Although, okay.
Yeah, like I said, it is an if.
There is a great deal of skepticism about the technology, but as far as the regulatory framework, setting the groundwork to obtain the knowledge, that's always a good thing. That knowledge may lead you to decide that, well, maybe this isn't really feasible, but at least there's no,
absolutely.
There's no negative value to knowing more.
Yes, absolutely.
But I mean, more in the short term, with your 2020, the 2030 target, for increasing renewables. Is there anything that that's missing in regulation or policy?
No, today I think there's sufficient, right? I mean, I think beginning with the renewable portfolio standards, which has been up significantly from 1% to 2.52% per annum. That's a huge deal in providing kind of a space for us to put more renewables in the system. Liberalization of foreign ownership of renewable energy facilities is also a big boost. And then, of course, as Mr. Risser talked about, the GEOP and GEAP programs are certainly big boosts to this renewable energy. So I think there is a significant support. I think the private sector is, just really has to respond and really meet those standards at this point, I think.
Okay. Richard, let me go back to you. We had talked before about it's near the top of your list, the Mindoro and the Palawan, markets there. And I think the way that I understood that is you had a successful kind of demonstration of that in Mindanao some years ago, where you had the interim market there. And after that, Mindanao's power situation improved a great deal. What I'm curious about is what kind of time frame do you have on that? I know that there's people in Mindoro who are very keen on this because even under their emergency rate is still pretty bad, and they're looking for some relief there. Is that going to be something that's going to get going within the next couple of months, by the end of the year? Or what do you think?
Well, hopefully it gets operational before or by the end of the year. We're in close coordination with the DOE the ERC, Transco, Napocor, NEA, with the LGUs, with the electric cooperatives in the area, the political leaders in the area, business sectors. We're hoping that the go signal will be given, so we may operate the same in these areas. Interestingly, I think what we should know is that in Mindoro, for example, or in the island of Mindoro, most of the energy or the generation capacity available in that area are oil-based plants, which is naturally more expensive. So what we're thinking is, if we accelerate the entry of the spot market there, because building your power plant and getting your PSA are two separate things. So generation facilities or investors would want to, well, most of them at least, would like to have the opportunity to get a PSA before they build. But if you have a market, particularly for RE plants, you give them the option to be merchant power plants in the spot market. And they can build power plants even in the absence of a PSA. And with the improvement of the mix, although of course RE we would say is still a little bit more expensive than our coal and natural gas, but it's a lot cheaper than diesel. So if you allow RE in, you'll improve the energy mix. There will be more technologies playing. It will drive down prices. And of course, the ARCOA. The ARCOA and the GF, that's very important. We can encourage now big users of electricity there to become captive customers, contestable customers, or retail customers, either GF or ARCOA. These are benefits other than the energy market itself that we can introduce in Mindanao, in Mindoro and Palawan ahead of the interconnection. Because the interconnection will happen. It's just a matter of when. But if you already have a market operating in Batangas, in Mindoro, for example, once the interconnection happens, you will have no problem with settlement. Because if the interconnection happens before the market, then you will have a problem with settling the energy imported or exported either way. So hopefully we see it before the end of the year. It's already in the pipeline. The draft for the technical working group is already there. It's just a matter of maybe a little push will perhaps help, and we'll see it before the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's one thing that maybe some people don't understand. A lot of times, a developer of a generation plant, unless they're a big outfit, will have a hard time getting financing, unless they have a PSA. So, having the market, kind of relieves that burden a little bit for some developers. I want to ask you both something, because you both mentioned something and it was curious to me. Should we be counting energy storage systems as part of the renewable percentage? I noticed in your data you list them separately. On yours, you include them.
No, we don't.
Okay.
No, so when we talk about attributable capacity, we actually just talk about the solar component.
Okay. All right. Well, you had it on your graph there.
Yeah,
looked
it
like
did.
Was,
it says solar plus BSS, but the number reflected is actually just the solar capacity.
I see. Okay. All right. I didn't get that.
I think it might have been in the footnote.
Okay, but here we go. The question still applies. Should we count that as along with the renewables? Because even though we count that as a generation source, it's not, at that point, it's not producing any emissions. And then whenever you move on to some maybe more technical, options like pump storage, same thing again. It's, once the water's pumped up the hill, after that, it's emissions-free generation. So can't we count that and, bump our percentage up a little bit? What's the global standard on that? I'm actually not sure.
Well, this is a personal opinion. Okay, policy-wise, it might be problematic. to count ESS as renewable because the renewable energy resources enjoy preferential dispatch treatment in the market. But when we talk of batteries, for example, they charge and they inject, and it's for shorter periods of time. I think batteries will be best suited really to provide our regulation requirements, our reserve requirements. So, and we see that in the market now. Most batteries are participating in the ancillary services market, in the reserve market.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with Richard. I think the current view that excludes it is actually good. In a way, it's a relatively conservative measure. But at the same time, I think maybe at best it would be good to have two metrics. I mean, it's good to also kind of track this, right? And see, because there is a significant value that it provides. Ancillary services, it allows a lot of these solar, well, at least renewable energy facilities to be dispatchable. So I think there is, I mean, from the purpose of tracking it, I think would be good to have some metrics that include it as well.
Well, the reason it made me think of it is because that is an area of investment that we'd like to increase, but if it's there is some incentive and some encouragement for renewable energy investment, but it may not apply to the storage systems, and therefore perhaps we don't develop that as quickly as we would like to. So, I'm wondering if maybe there should be some policy rethinking there.
Well, perhaps that may be considered when we're talking of hybrid systems. Say solar plants plus battery, and you can count them together. But standalone batteries may be a little more problematic in that sense.
So naked ESS I would agree is not necessarily something we would want to specifically incentivize. But going back to the question on incentives, I think yes, there is value to kind of propping it up. Number one, in a hybrid system, and number two, I think a different set of incentives, not quite the same as what we give for the core renewables.
Okay. I have a question for you in particular. You showed the chart where you have targets for reducing your scope 1 through 3 emissions. I'm curious as to what your strategy is for reducing the scope 3 part, which is the one that you have the least control over. That's mostly from people like all of us here doing our daily lives. What do you what's your direction to that for energy conservation?
I mean, you're hitting the right notes. I think well, first of all, it is the one that is least within our control, right? It's highly dependent on government policy. So all we can do is really advocate for greater renewables to be incentivized. So the RPS is a big deal. GEOP, GEAP, net metering, these are all great policies that help out. And then of course there are things that we can do, as you said, promoting energy efficiency is one, and we do that, and we've done that for quite some time now, even before we became more pronounced about sustainability. And there's also a few things we're doing in our supply chain. I'm talking about the non-power supply chain. As an example, we've set what we call our scorecard. Now we onboard suppliers. We're talking about non-power suppliers, right? We onboard suppliers who meet our sustainability standards. We don't just look at economic proposals or technical proposals. There's a sustainability component to it. So today, about 95% of our suppliers adhere to those standards. So that helps to a certain degree, but not quite the same as kind of the power sold, the power distributed. And to that end, we can only really advocate for more aggressive government policy today. And I think that kind of gets us to a point where we've been asked, can you guys commit to a net zero world by 2050? And the answer is, quite frankly, not quite, because we can probably zero out scope 1 and scope 2 because that one we can control. But scope 3, it's hard to predict how that's going to play out, right? Unless the government says no more thermal plants, no more fossil fuels, then we cannot quite commit to it. But as it is, any net zero commitment today has to include all scopes. There's no such thing as a hybrid net zero commitment, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, and isn't there two sides to that? I mean, if the government would hypothetically, I think, do something like that, say, okay, no more thermal plants. But what about the community?
No, exactly. There is a social component to it. If you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the one that we are most aligned with is UN SDG 7, right? Which talks about affordable and clean energy. The affordable comes before the clean, right? But it's no use to be clean if nobody can access it or nobody can afford it, right? So there is that social component that is very, very important, which we cannot compromise. And I think that's, and again, going back to a lot of these sustainability advocates that are pushing us to go for net zero. I mean, sure, right? But at what cost, right? And who do we prejudice by doing so?
Okay. One last quick question for you, Richard, because it's in my mind. It's kind of accepted by everyone that renewable energy generally tends to be a little more expensive. But do you have, off the top of your head, do you have a figure in mind? Because I know that the preferential dispatch, and some of the other programs have actually helped to reduce rates. Do you have off the top of your head, some dimension to that, like by how much since? Over the past couple of years, I know that might be putting you on might be putting you on the spot, but I was just curious about that.
How much more expensive is renewable?
No, I mean how much less expensive it is now compared to, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Well, I would say, of course, in the market, renewable energy is a price taker, so there's really no way of determining that through market prices. Because most renewable energy suppliers are covered by PSAs. Most. There are some who are merchant plants. There are a few RE suppliers that are merchant plants. So if you are going to talk about these merchant plants, then their price will be the market price. So assuming, for 2023, the effective spot settlement price is 644 pesos per kilowatt hour. So we can place that at 644. How much has it become lower? If you're going to compare it with RE with FIT, it started a few years ago, it's about 980. So if you compare that, so we're talking about 2 or 3 pesos. But of course, I have no way of ascertaining how much is renewable that are contracted. Right? I can only talk of renewable that are merchant plants in the market. Okay, those that are non-FIT and those that are covered by the GF and of course PSA. Okay, so maybe, conservative, let's say 2 pesos. I would say.
Okay. Which is close to 20%, maybe,
About, say, 20, 30%?
Yeah, over a span of a couple
about
years.
that. I mean, maybe just to pitch in here. I mean, when we, as Richard mentioned, FIT started at 980. When we contracted our first 2 solar plants, we went down to around 5 pesos immediately, right? Because it was a competitive process. So there you can see immediately a disparity in how market forces affect renewable energy prices that close. So that just gives you a sense. More, in that case, a bit more than 20% for sure.
Quite a bit more. Okay, well, we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you again, and I'm sure I'll have some more questions for both of you. We have a conversation about not today, but we're going to have that talk, I think.
Sign up for a year for only 80 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/premium to get your free trial of the Manila Times Premium.
Now, our fourth speaker for this afternoon has more than 18 years of work experience in the electric power industry. Presently, he is the Assistant Vice President and Head of Transmission Planning Department of the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP. Prior to working with NGCP in 2009, he was the head of the Luzon System Planning Division of the National Transmission Corporation. He previously worked in the academe and manufacturing industry. Ladies and gents, please give a round of applause for Redi, Allan, Remoroza.
Thank you, Dafort, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here in this forum and share with you this presentation on grid developments and renewable energy. And I would like to thank the Manila Times for giving NGCP this opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. I will provide you with a grid overview of where we are today, grid expansions, or where we are going, and renewable energy. Interestingly, this forum is titled Environmental Economical Generation, which signifies the need for a balance between having clean energy and economical energy sources. On this slide, we have the bar chart of the peak load and the total dependable generation capacity in 2023 based on DOE data. It will look like that we have more than enough generation capacity. However, the available generation capacity at any given time can vary significantly due to planned or unplanned power plant outages. Our highest transmission voltage is 500 kV, which is in Luzon. Here, we also have the data for the total circuit kilometers of transmission lines and total substation capacity nationwide. Since the operation of NGCP in 2009, the country's peak load has increased by 83%, and total dependable generation capacity, on the other hand, increased by 86%. In the map, we can see that there are unshaded islands that are not under NGCP operation yet, but we do have interconnection projects that will link the islands to the main grid. The Philippine grid accommodated such increase in load and generation because of NGCP's asset growth. Because of the grid expansion projects from 2009 to 2023, which resulted in a 14 or 11% increase in circuit kilometers of transmission lines, a 114% increase in total substation capacity, and a 225% increase in capacitors and reactors (MVAR). The capacitors and reactors are the equipment needed to maintain power quality in the grid. The increase in transmission line length may seem small at 11%, but equivalent to more than 45,000 MVA due to the transmission capacity upgrades of various transmission backbone facilities. One of NGCP's major achievements is the completion of the Mindanao-Visayas interconnection, which allowed the exchange of power among the three grids and allowed the optimization of the use of available energy resources. It was first energized in April last year, and in January 2024, already at full 450 megawatt capacity for the Mindanao to Visayas power flow direction and vice versa. NGCP will continue to expand the Philippine grid as set out in the Transmission Development Plan. In this grid map, we are showing a snapshot of where we are going. We are developing new transmission backbone to support generation developments. We are developing new substations for load growth, a stage-by-stage backbone loop configuration for improved resiliency, and new island interconnections. These developments would require government support through regulatory approvals of the projects, of course, as well as support for right-of-way and permitting, which are the main challenges in transmission project implementation. Historically, we relied heavily on generation from coal-fired power plants, but our country now aims to have an energy transition. That is by increasing the renewable energy share from 21% share in 2020 to 35% share in the energy mix, increase to 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. The variable renewable energy plants, wind, solar, offshore wind, would be expected as main contributors in achieving the RE targets. Integrating high levels of variable renewable energy, however, could cause grid operation challenges because of its intermittent nature of operation. Grid inertia reduction, which is about the strength of the grid, and voltage fluctuations. So, what are the requirements? Number one, indeed, we need transmission expansions to go to areas with RE resource potentials, such as Northern Luzon. Two, we need continuing enhancements in VRE forecasting to handle the intermittency better. Three, we need flexible generators with a fast ramping rate and low minimum stable load that can adjust to variations in solar and wind plant output. Lastly, we need energy storage facilities. We are not only talking about batteries, but also large-scale pump storage hydroelectric power plants. We have a lot of RE potential. For the competitive renewable energy zones alone, we have 35,000 gigawatts of total capacity for wind and solar. In addition, we have more than 63 gigawatts of potential coming from the 82 service contracts for offshore wind, which the DOE has awarded as of November 2023. But what would be the optimal capacity mix for the renewable energy? It would call for a capacity mix that would allow us to achieve the RE targets and at the same time result in least cost generation. Significance of generation expansion plan in generation transmission plan alignment. The chart here shows us the levels of committed generation capacity, indicative capacity, and capacity additions based on an optimal mix that would serve the demand forecast up to 2035. This is based on DOE's Power Development Plan issued in December last year. For Luzon, we can see the substantial indicative capacity proposed up to year 2035, which is more than twice the required level determined in the generation expansion plan. Given the many proposals, prioritization and generation transmission alignment would become very important. As shown in the flow chart, for power system expansion planning, there should be an iterative generation and transmission planning process with site planning as an additional critical step. The slide here shows a portion of the generation expansion plan from the DOE. This is for Luzon Grid. Let's look at the new offshore wind, or OSW. Second row from the bottom, new OSW. This is under the low offshore wind scenario. The optimal OSW capacity for Luzon by 2030 is 2,000 megawatts based on the DOE's generation expansion plan. Site planning would indeed be crucial in establishing the priority areas or pilot areas for this 2,000 megawatt offshore wind development among the more than 20,000 megawatt offshore wind projects with grid connection applications now to NGCP. Same kind of site planning would also be required for other RE technologies. In my final slide, I have here 3 key takeaways. First, the generation expansion plan, which involves the optimal capacity mix, is crucial in achieving generation transmission alignment. New transmission lines could take longer time to implement than renewable energy plant projects. Thus, the generation expansion plan, together with site planning, would aid in optimizing the available transmission capacity in the grid and in determining the prioritization of new transmission backbone projects. Second, to continue the priority grid expansions, we need support through the regulatory approval of the projects, as well as support in the right-of-way and permitting. And finally, key to accommodating high levels of variable renewable energy in the grid, we need energy storage facilities, not only battery energy storage systems, but large-scale pump storage, hydroelectric power plants as well. These, in our view, would help achieve environmental, economical generation. Again, good afternoon.
Thank you, Redi, for providing the realistic projections of the NGCP. We'll be inviting you again later for our second and final fireside chat after our 6th speaker. Rather, our 5th speaker. So our 5th speaker began his career with the Aboitiz Group as CEO of SN Aboitiz Power Incorporated. He became COO of Aboitiz Power Generation Business Group and COO of Aboitiz Power prior to his present appointment as President and CEO. At the helm of Aboitiz Power's transformation journey, he steers the company's generation portfolio towards significant growth in the next 10 years, aiming for a 50-50 balance between renewable energy and thermal capacities, and supporting the country's sustainability goals. Ladies and gents, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Manny Rubio. Let's give him a round of applause, please.
Distinguished guests, industry leaders, and advocates for a brighter energy future. Good afternoon. Magandang araw sa inyo lahat. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Manila Times for organizing this forum and inviting me to share my insights on the Philippine energy landscape. The energy industry is a growth enabler to many other sectors of the economy and society. Energy will need due focus now and in the future, and it's good to have these conversations about what we should expect down the road. The Philippines has seen impressive economic growth over the past decade, with GDP rising between 6% and 7% since 2012. The previous presentation, I guess, has shown you how much NGCP has invested in terms of infrastructure to transmit power, and quite impressive. This positive trend is expected to continue, fueled by growing population and a vibrant business environment. But with this economic boom comes rising electricity demand. Projections indicate a jump of 6.6% annually until 2040, or roughly starting at around 650 to 700 megawatts year on year. Addressing this challenge requires expanding capacity across all forms of power generation, including energy storage, while maintaining baseload capacity. However, attaining a balance of energy security and affordability amid the urgency of climate change compel us to seek a more sustainable path. The Philippines is at a crossroads concerning its energy system and the prosperity of its people. The path we choose will determine the sustainability of our environment and the quality of life for every Filipino. We must ensure that our pursuit of progress doesn't come at the cost of healthy and thriving future for generations. A sustainable energy transition is essential. It guarantees reliable power for Filipinos today while safeguarding a clean tomorrow for future generations. And this broad transition calls for substantial investments in infrastructure, including new conventional and renewable power plants, grid expansion to ensure reliable nationwide delivery, improved services, reach and efficiency of electric cooperatives and distribution utilities, and improving energy security and resilience. The country will need all forms of energy to sustain the nation's economic growth and development. Aboitiz Power's renewable and thermal capacities will help energize the Philippines' ambitions. We aim to grow our total generation portfolio to 9,200 megawatts by 2030, half of which will come from renewable energy, while the other half will come from traditional sources. A recent entry into the gas space demonstrates our drive to bolster our lineup of baseload assets and alongside over 1,000 megawatts of disclosed renewable energy projects. This reflects our dedication for helping ensure energy security and sustainability in our country. But building new power plants is just one of the puzzle. We need a robust, modern, and expansive grid to deliver energy efficiently nationwide, integrating new RE capacities into the grid and helping meet the country's electricity needs. Unlike thermal plants where we have land, we can put already the facilities, renewable energy sources would have to rely on where the sources are. So we need to ensure that the transmission is also available. Completing overdue transmission projects will unlock underutilized power sources in areas like the Visayas and Mindanao, ultimately improving grid stability nationwide, and I believe we're well on our way. A more interconnected grid will allow for higher electricity penetration, facilitating import and export from neighboring areas with surplus of excess generation, as what's happening now with Mindanao and Negros. Ancillary services are also critical for maintaining a delicate balance between electricity supply and demand in the power grid. They ensure the grid's frequency and voltage stay within acceptable limits, even with fluctuations in power generation or demand. Millions of Filipinos still lack access to reliable electricity, hindering development, education, and healthcare, particularly in remote areas. We must ensure that the benefits of the energy transition reach everyone. Energy security is the bedrock of any thriving nation. Without reliable power, investments flee, innovation stalls, and government stagnates, and growth stagnates. Sorry about that. Growth stagnates. Reliable power is the fuel that propels us forward. Furthermore, we recognize that this transition is a marathon and not a sprint. While it would take years or even decades to accomplish, a well-defined strategy and collaborative effort can accelerate our pace. As we look forward, a future powered by sustainable energy solutions, it's crucial to focus on key areas that will shape our journey. First, we need a more expansive transmission network, and that was highlighted already by the previous speaker. This robust infrastructure will be the backbone of a rapidly growing industry, ensuring it can keep pace with overall development and meet increasing energy demands. Second, the rise of variable renewable energy sources like solar and wind is positive, but we need to account for their intermittent nature. They are called variable renewable energy because they are variable. By focusing on increasing energy storage capacities and ancillary services, we can complement this growing pipeline and improve the overall quality and reliability of electricity delivered to the grid by these sources. Natural gas offers a cleaner alternative to traditional fossil fuels while providing a reliable baseload source of power. Integrating a larger role for natural gas within the energy system will act as a valuable complement to the intermittent nature of renewable energy sources. It's vital to initiate long lead time work on development and implementation of advanced technologies like nuclear power, hydrogen, ammonia, and digital innovations. While these solutions may not be ready for immediate large-scale development and deployment, early planning institution of regulatory frameworks are essential to ensure they can contribute to our energy system in due time and when they are needed. The transition to cleaner energy future requires a collective effort, and power generation companies alone cannot achieve this task. It necessitates collaboration across the entire energy sector, from generation to transmission to distribution. We can navigate this path responsibly by strategically augmenting baseload capacity, investing in grid modernization, and embracing new technologies. The government is vital in providing a clear regulatory framework that incentivizes investments in renewable energy and grid modernization. The country has taken significant strides in pursuing a more sustainable energy landscape. The Philippines Renewable Energy Act has been instrumental in lighting the path toward a greener future by introducing provisions that promote clean energy. And additionally, the feed-in tariff system has acted as a catalyst, incentivizing the development of RE projects that contribute to the diversification of our energy mix. Industry leaders across sectors, and not just in energy alone, can be transformative forces for good. Power sector leaders can leverage their deep expertise in developing, financing, and operating energy projects. They are uniquely positioned to accelerate our shift. This leadership can take many forms, from pioneering innovative energy technologies to implementing rigorous environmental safeguards and fostering a culture of sustainability within their organizations. But it makes more sense to foster cross-industry collaboration to ensure the energy transition happens smoothly. And for example, the services sector and heavy industries, mobility and transportation, social service, finance and technology, this will have to transition while keeping their wheels turning. The public has a role also in adopting energy-efficient practices and supporting sustainable energy initiatives. Responsible energy use at home and work, alongside efficient generation practices, can help ensure a reliable and sustainable energy future. The cheapest power plant is a plant that you don't have to build. Additionally, supporting sustainable initiatives, community solar projects, advocating for clean energy policies, or choosing ecosystem electricity providers empowers the public to shape a better world. So let us use combined resources and expertise to secure a reliable, affordable, and most importantly, sustainable energy future for the Filipinos. Together, we can transform the Philippine energy landscape, ensuring a brighter tomorrow powered by innovation, shared responsibilities, and a vision for a cleaner tomorrow. The journey will require a multi-pronged approach, adaptation, and dedication, but rewards in the future are really worth the effort. Maraming salamat and good afternoon.
Maraming salamat, Manny, for proposing your collaborative plan. May we invite you to make yourself comfortable on stage as we call on the Manila Times columnist Ben Kritz again to moderate our second and last fireside chat for the day. We also invite Redi to join them on stage for the hopefully very energetic discussion.
Okay, well, thank you both for your informative talks. And yeah, well, as you can see, I have quite a few questions on my little book here, and some of them probably are for both of you. But I want to ask you first, because this was something that was featured prominently earlier, as you heard. What is the anticipated timeline for the interconnection to Mindoro?
The interconnection target to Mindoro is in 2027. You might have heard of a 2025 target as requested by the Department of Energy. That's already next year, 2025. We got the approval for this project last year, and we are on the pre-construction stage for this project. We have identified the route. We have done the submarine, the marine survey. So we are in the pre-construction activity. So realistically, 2025 is a very tight timeline, but considering the right-of-way requirements and the permitting requirements, 2027 would be the more realistic timeline.
Just out of curiosity, is this project more challenging than other interconnection projects? Because I believe you have to cross a fairly active earthquake fault with your undersea cable. Is this presenting some issues that need to be worked out?
If we will compare it with Mindanao besides interconnection, this will require a much shorter submarine cable, only about 25 kilometers, while in MVIP, we have 90 kilometers of submarine cable. Even the overhead lines would be much shorter. The technical challenge for the Batangas-Mindoro interconnection is the crossing with the Malampaya pipeline. There's a pipeline there, but there would be a technical solution for that.
Yeah, well, one technical solution is that, in about 3 years' time, that pipeline is not going to be of much use to anybody, so maybe you don't need to worry about it by 2027. A question that I had received earlier, and obviously your company has been in the news quite a bit lately because of your big joint venture with the gas projects. How do you see the impact of more LNG power on power rates for consumers? I know that tends to be very volatile, but is there a trend that you're anticipating?
Yeah, that has been a question that's been asked. What really should be the long-run marginal cost of energy in the country? Before all the transition concerns, the short-run marginal cost was actually coal, being the most competitive at that time. But because of pressures on coal and you can't find financing already for new coal plants, but still, unfortunately, still coal is the cheapest in terms of fuel cost, right? But for new capacity, especially a major one like that, LNG being considered a transition fuel, is the option today for baseload power. It will still probably be slightly higher in terms of coal power cost, but it will take us into lesser emissions and lesser carbon intensity in the next 20 years, I would assume. Until, of course, a new technology is available that can replace LNG, that's cleaner, and that probably would be nuclear for baseload, maybe in 2035, 2040. But I think LNG will form a very vital role in making sure that the grid remains stable, especially with the entry of variable renewable energy, deeper penetration of solar and wind. LNG has the ability, LNG to power facilities has the ability to cycle much faster than coal and can stabilize the grid much better than coal plants, which will be needed if we are going to really push for variable renewable energy in the country.
Okay. While we're on the topic of variable sources, what impact does energy storage have on the grid and have on grid stability? Because it would seem that is a lesser challenge than just coming directly from the renewable sources. So would it perhaps be better if you focused more on energy storage and less on direct generation from the renewable sources, instead of having them go straight to the grid, have them go to the storage and then have the storage discharge, at a controlled rate? Is that something that's possible? Is that something that people are thinking about?
Yes, we are advocating for renewable energy plants tandem with their own battery storage or battery energy storage system. And we have been recommending that in all of our system impact studies that we issued, so that the battery can handle, can address the intermittency, could help the stability of the grid. And so I understand the Department of Energy is looking at it that for new solar plants or new variable renewable energy and storage system would be required. As of now, it's not a requirement. So there are proponents for battery energy storage, but installed separately from the RE plant and providing ancillary services.
Can I add to that, Ben? This is an issue very close to my heart. Initially, when the RE law came out, right, the initial draft, the IRR, and I apologize if this sounds technical, no, but I'll try to narrate this in very layman's term so that people can understand. The variable renewable energy principles, the ones that we'll be investing in the initial draft, if I'm not mistaken, are actually required to provide the balancing energy based on their day-ahead forecast. So the rule was, at least in that draft, is that you will forecast your output for the following day. But if you miss your forecast, then you are responsible for buying that power in the spot market. But that disappeared, which is actually the basis for these batteries behind the meter. So you tandem your solar with your battery. So solar investors can stabilize the output of their solar facilities by putting a battery, and the battery would be the one cycling to make sure that the output is stable. But that means you have to provide more batteries, and you have to provide more solar panels to charge the batteries, right? And I think what's needed in the grid are not just lithium-ion batteries or chemical batteries, but you asked me earlier, Ben, what's our thought with regard to pumped hydro, no? Which is the biggest battery that we can probably build in the country. CPK will be privatized by PISAM in October. A lot of interested parties. We are interested. But it's really difficult to justify standalone batteries, standalone pump storage, because of the model that you can actually justify it with. You pump in the evening and you sell energy during the day. But the difference between your pumping cost and the energy price during the day is difficult. At today's prices, difficult to justify the investment in pump storage. So there has to be some business model that needs to be developed in order to justify building of pump storage, which actually the grid needs.
Would returning that stabilizing power requirement back to back to RE development, would that actually help? Because I think there's some use for that. Particularly because of the risk of instability in the grid.
Redi, can you answer that in context of ancillary services?
Yeah. Regarding the battery storage system?
Well, what you were saying before, RE developers were, responsible for, making up for any deficit And that requirement has kind of gone by the board. Should they bring it back?
Well, we look forward to having this as a mandatory requirement for the new VRE. We understand that all the existing solar plants, it's not part of their financial model to add a battery storage system, but we can do something for new variable renewable energy sources.
I guess the short answer, Ben, is that without batteries behind the meter, it is all of us paying for that imbalance through ancillary services charges, right? Because the grid operator needs to provide the balancing energy, and they're buying that energy to make that frequency stable. And we're the ones paying for it through ancillary services. So by putting the battery behind the meter, we're putting that responsibility to the developer. Whether they'll charge additional costs on their customers, that one's, again, another topic, right?
Okay.
So Ben, at this point, you still have about 10 minutes. You could also accommodate questions from the floor if you wish.
Yeah, let's do that. Does anybody have a point they want to raise?
Well, while maybe they're working up the courage, you can go proceed with your follow-up question.
I mean, I can certainly fill the time, but if anybody has any questions, please do not be shy.
We have our microphone there
Put
near
a
the
paw in the
doorway.
air. You talked about the need for support from the government in solving right-of-way issues, permitting, and things like that. I mean, this is a familiar, this is a familiar subject. Where do you see? What are the biggest obstacles to getting right-of-way approved, getting permits approved? Is there something specific that you can point to that, it fix this and it will help? Or is the system in general needing an overhaul?
Well, that's a very good question. NDCP, we have the expropriation power. So we could expropriate the right-of-way for our new transmission line, but getting the writ of possession, the WOP, to actually start the implementation, that's something that not controllable at our end. If right now, I believe what would be needed is the full implementation of the EVOS. It's the law passed about the energy virtual one-stop shop that would facilitate all the energy infrastructure projects, not only generator projects, but should also include the transmission projects. So we should be able to benefit from that law to facilitate all the requirements in implementing transmission projects.
Well, who's dropping the ball? Because whenever we talk about the same subject with like ERC, for instance, of course the EVOS is, say, hey, we have this in place. This should be making it easier. So what level is the problem? Is this a local government issue, or is it? What I've heard is that it's a time issue to where it takes so long that you have by the time you get your writ of possession, the land that was bare, when you planned your transmission route, has now got houses all over it, and now the problem has become much worse. I mean, where's the hang up? What should government put their attention to make the EVOS law really work?
I would say that all the agencies involved are still in the preparation stage. We have a regular meeting with the member agencies, and also finding ways or looking at the issues being encountered. So certainly we are always using this to have this whole of government approach. The other agencies perhaps would even the inclusion in the online system. Supposedly it's an online system where you are being counted on the time duration. The paper is with you, and you could not escape from it. And there's a strict penalty as well. But well, while everyone's still preparing, that has not been fully enforced, I believe.
Okay, well, let's move on a little bit because I had a question concerning your recent announcement of your tie-up over the gas plants, which has drawn some fierce criticism and avowal from a couple of groups to resist it once hearings start. What is your position on their particular complaints that they've been airing, particularly the one about generation and distribution, being under the same umbrella, which it's not supposed to be according to PIRA?
Well, generation and distribution under PIRA is actually allowed to a certain extent, right? A generator can provide 50% of the demand of the distributor if there's a relationship between distribution and generation. So that's within the PIRA, so that's compliant. Second is that I think we need to accept that these plants, both Excellent Energy, Ilihan, Masinloc, if I'm not mistaken, and Aboitiz Power's GNPD plants offered the lowest prices in the competitive selection process conducted by Meralco when they went to tender for 1,800 megawatts for new capacities and 1,200 megawatts to replace what was actually TRO'd by the Court of Appeals, which was originally also being supplied by Ilihan, right? But I think at the end of the day, projects like this need economies of scale. The country can only afford one terminal to be competitive, right? Not everyone can put their own terminal and build an LNG facility. When we are addressing the baseload requirements of Cebu, we went to DOE and showed them a comparison between an LNG option and a coal option, right? We have an existing coal plant in Cebu, TVI 1 and 2, but the facilities are actually designed to accommodate a third unit. Most of the balance of plants are already in place. But because of calls for, well, quote unquote, cleaner fuel, then we said, okay, let's go for LNG as an option. When we presented LNG as an option, it showed that LNG probably would be at that time at the height of the Russia and Ukraine war. LNG is probably like 2 pesos 20 centavos more expensive per kilowatt hour than coal. It has gone down. It's now much closer than that, right? Given that LNG has really dropped, especially spot prices. But that gives you an idea of the economies of scale needed to be able to make LNG competitive, right? So, in fact, for Aboitiz Power, we see this as one of our best opportunities to expand our baseload aspirations outside of course, building new coal plants, because we cannot build a big coal plant anymore. No one's going to finance it, right? It's going to be difficult to insure it as well moving forward. So, and economies of scale, I think, will ensure a competitive supply to consumers. And again, given the fact that these plants actually won and offered the lowest prices in the competitive selection process.
Okay. Ben, maybe we can accommodate the question from the floor.
Okay. Somebody have a question?
Good afternoon po. First of all, congratulations, sir, for that wonderful speech a while ago. So, sir, for Sir Rubio, sir, sir, you said you're very committed with your 2030 sustainability target. So, what are the potential risks you are seeing that could hinder you from accomplishing it?
Well, quite sure there's a lot of potential risks, no? But we're trying to identify them and mitigating them as we go. I think the primary target that we're really aiming at for 2030 is growing a renewable portfolio and adding 3,700 megawatts of new renewable energy capacity. This requires land. This requires competitive financing. and of course talents that will actually develop these projects, and of course transmission availability. Given that renewable energy are actually are resource focused, we can only build, especially wind, right? We can only build wind projects where there are wind resources. Solar, we can build, of course, as long as there's flat land or land that's suitable for solar, we'll build it. But the problem is, if we're going to build solar on flat land, the chances are those lands are probably going to be converted from agricultural use to industrial use. So this thing about food issues and balancing energy and food production, I think will come into the discussion table maybe 3 years, 4 years from now. Already we are the largest rice importer, and yet we have been converting huge amounts of land for industrial use, and most of them being converted for solar farms. What we did in Pangasinan is that I think we're the only ones building solar plants on hillsides and mountaintops, right? Because there's nothing there, right? In fact, we're saying it's the first farmer-friendly solar facilities because we did not convert anything, right? It's not of use. No, it's a forest land. If we can actually find areas like that, again, it's not easy, but if we can have the opportunity to develop such areas, we will continue. But the challenge really is that land availability and resource availability to achieve the 3,700 megawatts. But we are well on our way. We have land banked about close to 800 hectares of land. That will be around 760, 770 megawatts of equivalent solar capacity. And we are looking at some wind resource areas, particularly in Camarines Sur. So, and of course, the CBK project, we've said that we're interested in participating in the bid, and that's 795 megawatts of pump storage.
Sir, since you are starting or you are commencing several renewable energy projects, so sir, what's driving the optimism in betting big on this clean energy projects?
I guess the optimism is based on, it's not really optimism, no? It's what's driving the impetus to actually build renewable projects, because we have to, right? Only two things I'm sure of. Climate change is real, and we need to transition to cleaner fuels, right? And there really is a need to consider cleaner technologies in the future. The problem is variable renewable energy is not the only solution. It has to be balanced with a balancing energy plant, right? Like a gas plant, for example. So we also believe that our thermal assets will play a vital role in the next 20 years as we actually transition to a cleaner future. So if that's my basis of optimism, then okay, that's the basis of my optimism. But I think there really is a need to actually develop renewable energy for a cleaner future.
Yes, sir. Actually, there's a need, sir. So, actually, you've allocated 73 billion for capital expenditures this year. So, sir, how much of this capital spending will be allocated for clean energy?
If I'm not mistaken, most of it close to 60 B.
60 billion for clean energy.
Yeah.
Thank
close
you so
to
much.
60 B. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your how is the expansion of the Cebu, the planned expansion of the Cebu plant progressing, and on your side, are you ready to hook them up and get it online when it gets put together?
I'll answer that. I think I can answer that also for NGCP. They are ready. The Cebu Magdugo to Cebu line has been completed and energized, and transmitting capacities coming from Negros to going to Cebu and then going to the core demand area of Cebu City. At the moment, we're getting all the necessary permits. We've gotten endorsements already from the provincial government, from the local government of Toledo. It has already existing ECC. That's why it was actually outside of the moratorium. But nevertheless, we were able to get certification from DOE to build that 150, even if it was outside of the moratorium. We have endorsements also from the chambers of commerce. I think the realization is being an archipelagic country, we really need to secure sources within the islands, right? And not really rely on exports, although we really need to export to balance and optimize the capacities across the islands. But the province of Cebu, especially Governor Garcia, see the need to be self-sufficient given the recent issue that we had in Panay.
Along those lines, the dam VIP is up to full power now, but it's a 450 megawatt capacity, correct? And as I understand it, there is a potential of something like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard it was around 1,400 megawatts of potential excess capacity in Mindanao that could be spread around. But you have a 450 megawatt line, so you still have potentially 1,000 megawatts that is stranded. Is there any plans to expand that or add an additional one going in another direction? Is that even economically or technically feasible to do?
Yes, for the Mindanao Visayas interconnection project, we designed it for a 900 megawatt capacity.
Okay.
So we have provision. We don't need to build another submarine cable transmission line. We just need converter station to double the capacity. But before that, our next project is the upgrade of the Luzon to Visayas link. Presently, we are at 440 megawatts. We are upgrading it to a bipolar operation. It's an HVDC technology that will double the capacity. It will become 880 megawatts. Then, next stage would be upgrading of the Mindanao Visayas. But you mentioned about potential excess capacity in Mindanao, or looking at the proposals, there are so many proposed generation, not only in Mindanao, but also in Visayas and also in Luzon. And we have yet to see in the market how the actual generation would happen. Based on the market operation.
Kind of the investment pledges sort of thing, I guess.
I'll add to that, Ben. Actually, our estimate is that the excess is around 450 megawatts. We are operating a baseload plant in Mindanao and a number of hydros. So that 450 can be taken up to the line going to Visayas. In fact, we see a need for new capacities by around 2028, 2029. Mindanao requires 120 megawatts on the average year on year.
Yeah, that was part of it too. Is like they're doing well now, but it needs to continue.
Ben, maybe a wrap-up question.
Okay. One wrap-up question. Well, how do you see, are you both on track for this year? We're in a little bit of a trying time with just coming out of some, economic hardships. There's potential of, some lingering after effects of El Nino. There's a little bit of political instability, but are things on track? Are by the end of this year, are you going to be, at your target or close to it? What are your, what if anything keeps you up at night? That might go wrong.
Well, we just reported our 2023 financials last week to the analysts, and we said we're quite bullish also with what's going to happen for 2024. I think government's doing a lot of good things to encourage investments. We're seeing strong demand across the board. And for us, we're looking at around 6 to 7% growth in demand for power. We're very much in line with our growth pipeline, and we're quite excited with this venture that we've entered into with Meralco Generation and San Miguel, which hopefully, after the approval by ERC and PCC, Ilian will start delivering the contracted capacity maybe in 4 to 6 months' time, depending on the approvals. So for Aboitiz Power, we're bullish about the future. We're preparing for our influx of demand and the connections that NGCP built from Negros to Visayas, from Mindanao to Visayas. I think we'll see Visayas to have a more competitive rate, competitive rates for power, especially when we also add the new capacity in our TVI Toledo facility.
Well, for us, NGCP will continue our ongoing major transmission projects. We fully recognize our very important role in expanding the grid and being the system operator. And we are also looking forward that this year we will be having the final determination. It's the approval of the ERC for the regulatory reset process of NGCP.
Okay, well, I think we'll leave it at that. I'd like to thank you both again for sharing with us today. And Dafort?
Yeah, let's give them a round
you.
of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your bullish pronouncements this afternoon.